is Tuesday, March 6, 2018. Madam Secretary, if you please call the roll.
Ms. Casabon? Present. Mr. Lauren? Here. Mr. Richardson? Here. Mr. Richard? Here. Mr. Willie? Here. Mr. Manella?
Here.
Mr. Davis? Here. Mr. Fitzmaurice? Here. Mr. Dougherty? Here. Mr. Drum? Here. Mr. Randolph?
Thank you. At this time, we respectfully ask that you silence all phones and electronic devices. Any recommendation of this commission that you wish to appeal, appeals cards are to our right. If you wish to speak before the commission, we would ask that you fill out a speaker's card so we have the name and address for our records. Each side will be provided 10 minutes to present with 5 minutes of rebuttals. And lastly, at the end of each case, if you wish to discuss it further, we ask you leave the building, as if you go into the back foyer, it does echo into the chamber. This time we would ask you to rise with an invocation by Commissioner Randolph, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Richard.
Gracious Father, once again we come to you with thanksgiving and praise in our hearts as we recognize all the blessings you bestowed in our lives. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for our families, for our jobs, for our parish that we live in, and the government that we represent and serve. Lord, we ask a special blessing upon all of us tonight, all these commissioners. Be with us as we make decisions that are important to all. And Lord, we ask that you continue to be with us and guide us throughout this day and throughout the night. And all these blessings we ask in your holy name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In our packets are the minutes from our February 6, 2018 meetings. If you'd please review, and I'll entertain any motions. Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Motion by Commissioner Fitzmaurice to approve. Commissioner Randolph. Second by Commissioner Randolph. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, please vote.
All voted in favor. Motion approved.
Am I correct that Commissioner Richard's ballot is not working properly this evening? Is that correct? It noted, or Commissioner Richardson? I'm sorry? Okay. As such, he will do a hand vote so that the public can see. It won't record on the electronic system, but he will do a hand vote, and either for or against. Staff postponing of cases.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, we have 2018-913 ZC and 2018-914 ZC. And this is a request to postpone until May 1st meeting after further discussion with the representative, Mr. Palmerone. The case has to be re-advertised because we had a misunderstanding in regards to the request to MD2, which should be MD1. And for that reason, we request that 913 and 914, which is side by side, be postponed, and Mr. Marone is here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We will read them. We will move them to the top of the agenda and read them in. And those are the only two. Helen?
No, Mr. Chairman. On page 3, number 9, 2018-917 ZC And we have a request here from the representative, Mr. Jeff Shane, to postpone, and we also have a request for a community meeting to take place in Slidell.
And the postponement is for
1
1
month.
month. All right, any others?
We have a request also for 2018-918 ZC and 2018-919 ZC. And the reason to postpone until next month at the April meeting is that there was an error in the original legal description that was submitted to us. And, as you know, because of legal procedure, we have to re-advertise the proper legal description in the newspaper.
Any others?
No.
Okay, we will then proceed with these before we get into the rest of the agenda. First one being 2018-913-ZC, existing zoning A3 Suburban District, proposed zoning A4A Single Family Residential District. The parcel is located on the south side of Emerald Forest Boulevard, east of Faulkner Drive, Ward 3, District 5. The parcel is 7.11 acres. The petitioner, Brian Baccaro. The owner, Joan Prieto Doolittle, Golden Properties LLC. Kayla Isabel Prieto, Clay Carl Prieto, Rosalind Prieto. Council District 5. Staff is recommending that it be postponed till May 11th by
May
representative. May 1st, excuse me. May 1st meeting. Is a representative here? Mr. Marone.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Paul Marone on behalf of the petitioner of these two cases. As Ms. Lambert said, we would request a table so that the matter can be re-advertised to the MD1 zone rather than the MD2. And as you know, these two cases are companion cases, and so we felt it would be best to keep them together as we move through this process. So for those reasons, we would ask that both cases be tabled this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Marone. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Hearing none, I close it to the public, and I'll bring it to the commission. Commissioner Randolph. Commissioner Randolph makes a recommendation to postpone until the May meeting. Commissioner Dougherty.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Dougherty. Any further comments? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Randolph to postpone until our May meeting, second by Commissioner Dougherty. Please vote.
All voted in favor. Motion to postpone approved.
2018-914-ZC. Existing zoning, A4 Single Family Residential District and A3 Suburban District. The proposed zoning, MD2 Medical Clinic District. The parcel is located on the south side of Emerald Forest Boulevard, east of Faulkner Drive, Ward 3, District 5. The parcel, 10.58 acres. The petitioner, Brian Baracco. The owner, Joan Prieto Doolittle, Golden Properties LLC. Kayla Isabel Prieto, Clay Carl Prieto, Rosalind Prieto, Council District 5. Mr. Marone, any further comments? I recommend to postpone until May 1st. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the postponement? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, we close it to the public and we bring it to the commission. Commissioner Lauren. Motion by Commissioner Lauren to postpone to the May meeting. Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any further comments? Please vote.
All voted in favor. Motion to postpone approved.
2018-917-ZC, existing zoning, A3 Suburban District. Proposed zoning, PF1 Public Facilities District. The parcel is located on the west side of Allen Road, north of Miller Road, being 57209 Allen Road, Slidell, Ward 8, District 14. The parcel is 3.44 acres. The petitioner, Jeffrey Shane. The owner, Faith Bible Church of Slidell, Alfred N. Young, Council District 14. Staff is recommending through the petitioner postponement for 1 month.
Correct.
Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, and I represent the owner and petitioner, Faith Bible Church of Slidell. At the request of Councilman Smith, who called me this afternoon at around 4 o'clock, and because of concerns raised by various neighbors, he requested that we make a request this evening for postponement, with also a hope of having a community meeting, hopefully in the Towers building in Slidell. This information was only presented to staff late this evening, so we are uncertain at this moment as to whether or not the Towers building will be available on the typical date, which would be 2 weeks from now, as Ms. Lambert will be handling a community meeting for you that same evening in this chamber at 6 o'clock. So we would not only appreciate a postponement until April, but equally importantly, the setting of a community meeting, whether it be 2 weeks from today, tomorrow, Thursday, or even the following week. We'll certainly wait to hear from staff as to its availability and also Councilman Smith's. I would also, if I could, ask if there's any in the audience this evening that are here for this case. And Councilman Smith was hoping to get that word to you this afternoon, and perhaps it did not get to you. He didn't call me till around 4 or 4:30. But I say that because I didn't want to be disrespectful, meaning that had we known this prior to 4:30 today, I recognize that these fine people came from Slidell. But that is what it is, and we look forward to working with these people, having good dialogue in the weeks and months to come.
Thank you.
Mr.
Is
Chairman.
there any, pardon?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Maybe we can ask, to make sure that everyone in the audience fill out a card, so I will be able to reach them to give them the exact date. And also, maybe Mr. Randolph is suggested to sit on this committee, but maybe other commissioners would be interested as well once we have the date set up.
Thank you. We'll continue with the process before we bring that back. With that being said, again, reiterating what Ms. Lambert stated, if you would please fill out a card so that they can communicate with you in the event that the commission does afford the postponement and the community meeting as requested. With that being said, I would ask, is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the postponement? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the postponement? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Alyssa Maurice Anderson. I reside at 1934 Windmere Drive in Slidell, Louisiana. I'm here this evening representing Judy Bergeron Trigg and her husband Calvin Trigg, who are residents of 57223 Allen Road, immediately adjacent to the petitioner's property. We don't have, we would like to request that if there is a postponement, that postponement be provided on a conditional basis. We have received the staff's report that recommending that the parcel be rezoned to a PF1 public facilities zoning. I've noted that the staff has indicated that they don't object, considering that the objective of the request is to bring the existing use in compliance with the appropriate zoning district, which based on the 2025 future land plan calls for the area to be developed with residential use in mind. I notice also that in staff's report, they have designated the three or highlighted the four properties that are adjacent to the petitioner's property as A3 suburban district property. PF1 is not a PF1.
In all due respect, I would ask you to speak on for or against the postponement. You came up
Okay,
against postponement,
then I would
not any debate about what the case is, but regarding postponement of the case.
Well, I would request that the case be heard this evening. In the event that the council deems fit that it should proceed on a postponed basis, I would just ask that the staff be required to review this case again more thoroughly, to more thoroughly note the various churches that are already located in the area, and they're not designated as PF1. So if that could be a condition of the postponement and be available for when we come back in 30 days, I think that would be an extreme help to the commission in making a decision.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition of the postponement? Hearing none. Mr. Shane, any further comment in a rebuttal?
Yes, sir. With all due respect to the comments made, Councilman Smith asked me for my word as representative of petitioner if we would request postponement, and I told him that under no conditions would I proceed this evening, I guess unless compelled by you. I certainly understand you're the authority, but so we certainly, I believe it's in not only the petitioner's best interest, I think it's in the community's best interest for there to be some dialogue established and have some discussion so that when we do come back to you, perhaps we will have closed the gap.
Thank you. Any further comments, ma'am?
Thank you, Chairman. The only thing I would add is that Mr. Smith called me as well, and we are both representing Mr. Smith's representation, which is a bit odd. But I would say that when I expressed my concerns to Mr. Smith, he acknowledged that putting our concerns on the record this evening and allowing the commission to table it for further consideration and data gathering if necessary, would be appropriate as well. So I don't think we would be violating any commitments to Mr. Smith if we proceeded today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, any comments? Not at this time. I would close it to the public and bring it to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that we really appreciate and try to make sure that we accommodate as a commission is to identify our independence but inclusion as it relates to making the right decision for our citizens and the communities that we serve. And aside from anything that's been said, I'm going to make the motion that we postpone this and have a community meeting with the community, along with any commissioners that would like to be present there, so that this can be better assessed by the community and the representatives of the property.
Very good. So you make the motion to postpone for 1 month, as well as to conduct a community meeting whenever the tower building would be available, and then we would broadcast that to the concerned citizens relative to
Yes.
this. Very good. Commissioner Dougherty.
I'll second Mr. Randolph's motion.
Second by Commissioner Dougherty. Any further comments? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Randolph to postpone for 1 month, second by Commissioner Dougherty. There will be a community meeting held. Staff will advise us when hopefully the tower building is available, make it more convenient, and those dates will be provided to all who provide that information. Any homeowners organizations or any other community organizations that would like to participate, and of course, Mr. Shane. With that, I would ask for a vote.
All voted in favor, motion to postpone approved. (2018-918-ZC), existing zoning, A2 Suburban District. Proposed zoning, A7 Multiple Family Residential District. The parcel is located on the north side of Strain Road, east of Louisiana Highway 59, being Lot 1, Mandabita Subdivision, Ward 4, District 5. The parcel, 2.988 acres,
The petitioner, Black Oak Holdings LLC, care of Jeffrey D. Shane. The owner, June Barrios Wiley, care of Jeffrey D. Shane, Council District 5. Staff, postponement for 1 month.
Yes, and I would also like to inform the commissioners that the map that was distributed to each of you is in regards to the two cases, 918 and 919, and it was suggested to be distributed to you. It's from someone who's here in the audience.
Thank you. Mr. Shane.
Good evening again. I represent the petitioner, Black Oak Holdings LLC, which is Mr. Matt Bowers. My client's with me this evening. These two cases should be considered companion cases because we propose to rezone both of them to A7 and develop what we think will be a very high-level and a very deserving multifamily project at this location. There was some glitches in the legal description as to the first case, which required a re-advertisement. For that reason, I think it would be foolish to take on the second case for the 3 acres this evening. You need to see them both together. So I think that when we come back in April, assuming we have all of the information that's needed, we'll proceed in hopes that both cases can be jointly heard. And if we find that there is a lot of people in the community that are participating that need further information, we'll certainly be amenable to a community meeting. In that regard, I'm hoping that before you dispose of these cases, that we could get some idea from you by asking who is here as it relates to the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Per Mr. Shane's request, if you would please, thank you, show of hands as to who's here for that case. Welcome. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the postponement? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the postponement? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Davis.
I'll take the motion to postpone for 1 month.
Motion by Commissioner Davis to postpone for 1 month. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Commissioner Davis to postpone for 1 month, second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Please vote.
All voted in favor of the postponement. Motion approved.
2018-919-ZC, existing zoning, I-2 Industrial District, proposed zoning, A7 Multiple Family Residential District. The parcels located on the north side of Strain Road, east of Louisiana Highway 59, Ward 4, District 5. The parcel, 13.6 acres. The petitioner, Black Oak Holdings LLC, care of Jeffrey D. Shane. The owner, the estate of John Christakis, Nectarius Christakis, Maria C. Stokes, care of Jeffrey D. Shane, Council District 5. Staff, again recommending postponement for 1 month. Mr. Shane. Same comments as relates to the previous case. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the postponement? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Randolph. Motion by Commissioner Randolph to postpone for 1 month. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Any further comments? Please vote.
All voted in favor to postpone. Motion approved.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. The public is invited to speak on behalf of or in opposition to any of the cases heard this evening before the commission. Zoning change request cases, applications for a proposed change of zoning district or amendments to the land use ordinance requiring review and recommendation of approval by the zoning commission before action by the parish council are as follows. 2017-845-ZC, text change, an ordinance amending the Unified Development Code, Volume 1 zoning, relative to the definition and the establishment of reception venues within unincorporated St. Tammany Parish. This was postponed from the February 6, 2018 meeting. Staff?
In light of the discussions that took place at the January meeting and the motions that were made, as well as the discussion that took place at the February meeting, staff would like to recommend to postpone this case to allow to re-advertise the case with more information and also to clarify some aspects that were brought up during the motions that were made. And for that reason, we would like to request to postpone the case to May 1st, to the May 1st meeting.
And the reason for the postponement for that time period, Ms. Lambert, is relative to providing some further text and then re-advertising that?
Yeah, because of the requirements to advertise 3 times in the newspaper, and we've passed the deadline for the April meeting, then we'd like to request to re-advertise and be that the case be placed on the May 1st zoning meeting.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the postponement? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the postponement? Mr. Shane.
Good evening. I have for the record, I guess, Jeff Shane with the Jones Fussell Law Firm. And I've appeared before you this evening in favor of the legislation as drafted with a suggested amendment, and in particular as to the suggestion that there be a postponement of this ordinance for, I guess, a redraft and re-advertise. I would respectfully suggest that you take into consideration a couple of things. Number one, this is the 3rd month in succession that this matter has come to you on the agenda. For those of us that have attended the January and February meetings, I know that the record is very clear as to the things that you requested staff consider after your January meeting. And I would imagine that each of you, as did the general public, had a reasonable expectation that we would see some form of amendment, revision, etc., at last month's meeting. I'm by no means chiding staff for not producing that. They have their job, and I recognize that decisions are made that are well beyond my purview, and they should be. Now, though, based on the discussion that we had in February, I had an assumption that there might be a meeting of some members of the commission with the staff in hopes of formulating a solution, and that perhaps that solution would be forthcoming this evening. I understand that if, in fact, there is a substantive redraft of the ordinance, that the law might require that it be re-advertised. And if it's re-advertised due to the number of advertisements, it may be that it cannot be heard in April. But I also believe, and this is my opinion, I guess, as it relates to why I oppose the postponement. I'll try to limit my comments to that. I, and perhaps others, are prepared this evening to discuss with you what I think would be some reasonable amendments that you can legally make that does not require the re-advertisement of this matter, and would allow you, if you are so inclined, to move on the legislation this evening and move it to the council. The council believed that there was good reason for you to study and consider this ordinance. Based on the quality of the comments that you've made at every meeting, it's been obvious to me that you've read it and studied it, and you have thoughts. I do not think that waiting another 60 days is in the public's best interest, and quite frankly, it's probably not fair to your docket either, particularly in light of some of the postponements we've already had this evening that are likely to come back at you in April and May. So as it relates to the postponement, I respectfully request that you hear the matter this evening, take comments from the public, and attempt to craft a recommendation to the council asking that they create a reception venue ordinance that would apply in certain zoning classifications in our code.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I would close it to the public and I will bring it to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
I'm on, yeah. Yeah, I don't have a problem hearing the case tonight, but I guess we have the legal question of whether we need to have it advertised or not. So, legal counsel.
Counsel? You are going to be on. You are now live.
If the changes come from staff, they need to be re-advertised and they need to lay over, basically. If the commission would like to make oral changes tonight and move that on to the council, that is in the purview of the commission. So it depends on the way that you do it. If you want staff to make the changes, you want to see the changes in writing, you want the public to see the changes in writing before you make a decision, it needs to be re-advertised. If you have changes that you want to make right now and send it on to council, you can do that.
Thank you. Commissioner Willie, does that answer your question?
Pretty much. So I don't have a problem hearing the case tonight then, moving forward with that. Unless the staff can entertain their change, their suggestions anyway.
Well, basically, is that this evening you can vote on the text that you have in front of you. However, in order to add some more language to the parking or any additional conditions or requirements that would require advertisement. So if the commissioners want to, vote on the different zonings or make any changes to the different zoning as it is presented in front of you this evening, it is possible. But re-advertisement would be necessary if there's any other changes that needs to be made to the parking or to add any other conditions.
Well, based on what legal counsel just said, she said if we had any oral changes, it would be legal to do that tonight.
Oral changes can be made, in regards to what's in front of you. In other words, to the zoning itself.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Davis, and
Yes,
if you would also elaborate on the fact that we had a subcommittee that reviewed this.
yes, we had several of us on the subcommittee reviewing the venues for all these reviews and such, and reception venues for large, small, and medium size. We took also into consideration Mr. Hernandez's information about parking situations and things like that, and noise. And this is one of the reasons why staff wants to postpone right now, because they have the verbiage basically almost written that they'd like to include into this ordinance. As far as the four commissioners that sat around and talked about what we'd like to do as far as changing the actual zoning classifications, it is going to be our recommendation that for the reception venue small to go from NC4 to NC5, it's going to be our suggestion that the reception venue medium to go from NC6 to HC1, and that'll be the only two zoning changes for this ordinance. I just thought I'd let everybody know that, and from that, I'd like to make a motion to postpone for just one more month.
It would need to be for until the May meeting.
Oh, until the May meeting, sorry, but that just has to be done. Because I'm not prepared to give the verbiage in the planning department's verbiage the way they have it written.
So, Commissioner Davis, you are making a motion to postpone until the May meeting.
That is correct.
Okay. Commissioner Casabon.
I feel that the commissioners that have sat and reviewed this, we need to have this written into the verbiage written in by staff. So I'll make a second motion to postpone.
Motion second by Commissioner Casabon. Commissioner Lauren.
I have a question for Helen. Mike?
Certainly.
Helen, would it be possible to make those written corrections and have it ready and re-advertised for the April meeting? Do we have enough time?
We have to re-advertise, however, it will not be on the agenda in April. It will come to you for the May meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to make sure I fully understand this, we have a subcommittee that is recommending some new zoning classifications. Sounds to me like there's perhaps not a lot of debate there. That in itself won't solve this issue. We still have to have additional language in the amendment, in the ordinance. Am I correct?
The issue that came up in the committee was relative to parking. That was a critical text. We did ask the question, Commissioner Richard, to your point, that if we were to make the amendments of the NC5 and the HC1, would they in turn cover any of the text change that would direct, for example, throughout the parish, there are numerous ordinances relative to parking that would be specific to these zoning classifications, to noise levels. There's already ordinances in place. None of this exempts any of those or supersedes any of those. So I think the question is very appropriate as to whether the text that the committee recommended in any way would further amend this particular ordinance beyond just their zoning classifications. And I believe, Commissioner Richard, that's your question.
Yeah, my question is real simple. You're telling me we can't vote on these subcommittee recommendations because there's some additional language that's necessary, or do we have ordinances that are already in place that cover it?
Staff, Helen.
Well, right now, if no changes are made to the parking, we will refer to the restaurant parking requirements. Also, it was brought up that there might have been some issues or some concern about should just the ceremony take place outside, or should we allow the reception to take place outside, or should it be only inside? And this is the additional language that may need to be included into or adopted with this ordinance. At this time, that's the reason why it would have to be re-advertised. However, the zoning commission this evening could vote on what they have in front of them and make changes. However, it would only be changes to the zoning itself that is in front of you.
I understand staff's comments. I guess legal would have to tell us whether or not we have appropriate sound ordinances, noise ordinances, parking related to those zoning. I'm prepared to move forward. I really don't want to push this down the road, but obviously if there's a motion, if there's a second, we'll have to vote on that. Thank you.
Excuse me, Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I'd like to remove my motion.
No,
motion.
We've got a motion and a second. We'll proceed with that, but if you'd like to make any further comments relative to your position.
I am prepared to finalize this tonight, just out of courtesy to the planning department. I was going to go ahead and let them go ahead and re-advertise with the verbiage they want to have. But rest assured, when it comes to things such as venues, noise, parking, all that is already taken into consideration. These things don't have to be in the ordinance itself. The public has the right to say, okay, there's too much noise happening at these venues. Do they have an alcohol license at these venues? So that's really clear. I was just trying to be more transparent to the public for this reason. That's all I'm trying to say.
Are there any further comments of the commission? If not, in light of Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Richard's, and other comments, what we will do is vote on the postponement. I personally will not vote for it so that we can continue on with the discussion. Mr. Shane, it is now in front of the commission, in all due respect. So at this point, we're going to vote solely on the postponement.
I yielded, though, my speaking.
Mr. Shane, in all due respect, it's in front of the commission.
I apologize.
Thank you. We have a motion in front of us to postpone until May 2nd by Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Casabon. Please note that a nay vote would be against the postponement. Please vote.
Ms. Casabon voted in favor of the motion. All others voted against. Motion to postpone denied.
Very good. With that, I will entertain any other motions in front of the commission. Commissioner Davis.
Well, I should have done this in the first part. I'll make a motion that we have the reception venue for small change the zoning requirement to NC5, Retail and Service District. And I'll also make a motion that we change the reception venue medium to Highway Commercial 1 from NC6. That's my motion.
And make a motion then to amend the ordinance with those changes.
To amend those changes and to present that to the council.
So moved. Commissioner Willie.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Willie. Commissioner Richard.
Before we vote, I'd like to ask Mr. Shane to come back up. I have a question for you. You made a comment in your opening remarks that you had some suggestions. I just want to hear them before we vote. Thank you.
Mr. Shane.
I appreciate the courtesy. First thing, I owe you and the commission an apology. I know better to speak when it's not appropriate for me to speak. I'm human. I make mistakes like everybody. And I will say that the only thing I wanted to do was preserve my right to continue to speak because I only spoke as it relates to the postponement as you had requested. But I do appreciate the courtesy and I apologize. Enough of that. We have other important business. The suggestions that I wanted to make to the commission really are twofold. Number one, based on the amendment that has been offered, I think legally you have every opportunity to make a recommendation to the council. With regard to concerns about the mitigation of impacts, whether it be noise, whether it be traffic, whether it be litter, whether it be nuisance type items, as some of you have mentioned this evening, we have a code of ordinances that are filled with regulations that address events such as this. By way of example, this use that we're referring to is commonly made in many other zoning districts at present. Weddings, retirement functions, political rallies, birthdays, you name it. The parish has the authority and has the legal framework, if you will, to control and mitigate those impacts based on regulations. As to noise, you have a noise ordinance that sets the amount of decibels that can emanate from a property based on its zoning. It varies from zone to zone. The public may not be aware of that, but I want to make sure you're aware of that. So that's the first point. I believe that the laws are in place. The second point I would make, though, is that as this legislation continues, it's not going to become law tonight. It would only be a recommendation. There is going to be ample opportunity for all of us, whether we're citizens, whether we're a special interest group, commission, or the council, if we want to continue to shape the legislation as it goes forward, it can be amended at the council level. So I don't want anyone to have the impression that this is rush the baby and there's only one bite at the apple. This particular proposition has been with you for 3 months. I believe that conceptually you are prepared to send it to the council for further study and review. It will not be adopted at their April meeting. It will only be introduced. It will go to Agenda Review Committee, et cetera, et cetera. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I hope that you will amend the ordinance as suggested and recommend it to the full council.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to recognize the other commissioners in the queue for comment, and then recognizing that we are now discussing a different aspect than a postponement, I'm going to open it again to the public. Commissioner Randolph.
Following without it being that ambiguous is, Mr. Davis, you said you're changing the small venue, the zoning to an NC
NC5.
5, and right now it's a 6.
No, right now it's NC4. It was the
NC4.
recommendation by the ordinance.
Okay.
NC5 covers things like restaurants, restaurants with lounges, and that's really one of the first things that indicate any possible of alcohol consumption at these venues.
Okay. With that in mind, and I don't want to be confused, item number 11 on our paper here,
Yeah.
amend section 103.812 NC-6, isn't that under the small?
No.
That's
It's,
not?
it's written upside, it's not that it's written upside down, but no, if you look
So the
above it,
description is above?
that's correct. The
I got you.
description is
I got
above.
you.
That's correct.
Okay. That's my question.
Thank you, Mr. Randolph. Commissioner Dougherty.
Yes, question, if this passes and goes on to the council, would it be appropriate to ask staff to come back to us with another ordinance at April with the changes that Mr. Shane may have some ideas on, as well as the commissioners with the parking and the noise and all that kind of stuff, and then us look at that and either go forward with it or turn it down?
I'll defer to staff to comment, but once we approve a recommendation, it goes forward to council unless something else were to come before us, which would be a different ordinance.
That's correct.
We would be,
It would have to be a different ordinance.
Right, yeah,
Right, so
and
this-
that's what I was asking, is if staff could prepare another ordinance basically amending what we're going to vote on here shortly. And let us look at that in April and then get that on to the council.
yeah, well, I believe relative to the scope of what this one is, that right now we're voting, or we're considering.
We're just going
These-
to consider
these-
this
these
one,
only
and
two
it's
changes.
going to be a separate vote all the way.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm just asking,
You would like to have
If the-
another ordinance on the same basis to come forward?
right, not tonight, but at the April meeting,
Respectfully, may I ask why you would want that?
so that we could see and take a position on the changes that staff has worked diligently to get, and it's simply a legal matter right now of advertising.
Wouldn't, or could not staff provide the same input relative to the council?
Well, basically, as this evening, you would be voting on this ordinance, and if there's any other language that you would like to add as far as parking, it would have to be addressed into a separate ordinance that would have to be advertised presented at the May meeting in light of what we discussed at the two of the previous meetings. So this would have to move on, and then in a
Correct.
separate ordinance.
Would specifically address parking?
Parking and noise and anything else that we have asked staff to amend this, if we can't amend tonight, let this go forward. And it could be done at the council level, but it's just an opportunity for the zoning commission to look at basically what we have asked to have done.
I think that could be under consideration, and again, talking to staff and legal as to whether or not it would come back before us, or again, a recommendation of an amendment go forward to the council just separately.
And if they want to handle it that way, that's fine
Correct,
too.
then they could.
Yeah.
Thank you for the suggestion. Are there any further comments by the commission? Because again, I'm going to go back to the public and give them an opportunity to comment now on the fact that we are hearing this case. With that being said, I will start with Mr. Shane. Mr. Shane, would you care to make any further comments relative to the case?
With all due respect, I'd like to just reserve my comments and see if there's something else that comes up, but I don't want to be redundant.
Certainly. With that, is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the ordinance? Mr. Lagarde, or would you like to speak in opposition? You would make a comment.
I just wanted to make sure you were correct, because Mr. Shane, I believe, was speaking in favor of it, and I didn't know if you were
Correct.
calling for anyone else.
Right. And Mr. Hernandez, would you like to speak in favor or opposition, or just make a comment?
In opposition.
In opposition. And Mr. Lagarde, you as well in opposition?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Commission members, my name is Ross Lagarde. I appeared before you last month on this exact same issue. I believe the comments from the commission members at that time were fairly clear. Y'all wanted to see something else added to this ordinance. Based upon what I've heard here today, it looks like there may have been a subcommittee. Y'all may have discussed some additional issues to add to this ordinance, and staff recommended that we continue this vote on this ordinance until the staff has had time to draft. I have not seen any of these comments. The public has not seen any of these additional comments or this language. The staff recommended a postponement until the public can see this. I understand the motion on the floor. It's going to attempt to change the current zoning classification to NC5 on the small venue and to HC1 on the medium venue. The issue that begs in my mind is whether that's a substantive change that requires re-advertisement. I don't know if it does as I stand here right now. I guess we're hoping that it does not, because otherwise it would be subject to a legal challenge. I'm not sure why we're rushing this thing. In January, this came before this commission. It was postponed so that changes could be made. February, we came back. No changes were made between January and February. February, we came back. This board again recommended changes. As I stand here today, the exact same ordinance that was in your packet in January is sitting in this packet in front of me. Now, understand the verbal changes have been made. We're here for a motion. I'm asking you, show it to us in writing before you vote on it. The public's here. My clients are here. We're interested in seeing what comes up, and that's my request. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them. And for the record, the same issues we had the last two meetings are the same ones that are before us tonight. I don't need to repeat all of them. Parking was obviously one of them, and we can go through that again, but I believe we understand that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lagarde. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. Caller Hernandez. I'd just like to second everything he just said on this. You know, the unfortunate thing about this is that I guess I didn't say anything in favor of the postponement because I just assumed incorrectly that it was going to be postponed. And I think it's fairly clear to me that the changes that are being suggested, at least by some of us, would in fact require a re-advertisement. And so therefore, I guess I'm disappointed that we're not at the re-advertisement and the postponement motion again, but I guess, someone could again do that. I had given a couple hours ago my version. I shouldn't have done this last month, but I was very cute about not giving it to the staff. But I did, in fact, have a revised ordinance, which I then gave to the staff a couple hours ago. Now, they have not obviously had the opportunity, I don't think, to really look at it in any detail. I would very much like to have the commission look at my version of what I thought needed to be done, and it would in fact require a re-advertisement, and dealing with parking in particular. I guess what I'm confused about is this definition now, and I don't know what the definition is now, because I certainly made or suggested changes to the definition as was proposed before, based on comments that were made, and I think it would be a clear difference between what was advertised and what was online, and what I for one, and I think others would suggest that needed to be made in terms of changes. So I would hope that you would reconsider postponement again. I hope that you would vote no on these changes, because I believe that other changes need to be made, and please give that some consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? Mr. Shane?
Mr. Chair, I don't want to be viewed to be out of order, but hopefully I made it clear that I wanted to reserve time to speak if I thought new issues were brought up. So I would like to address the comments just made by the last two gentlemen. Number one, it is only my opinion, but it is my opinion that I do not believe that the proposed amendment is a substantive change that would require re-advertisement. And the reason is as follows. If, for example, the small venue were going to go to a more restrictive or lower zone, such as NC3, I believe that it would be substantive and we would need to re-advertise. The case was advertised for levels of NC4, NC6, and HC2. To slide those levels to NC5, HC1, and HC2 is not taking away an opportunity for the public to believe that an activity could occur in a zone that they had no anticipation of. So I believe that it would be erroneous for any of you to believe that it's improper, that you cannot proceed with the amendment based on it being a substantive change that requires legal re-advertisement. The second point I would like to make is somewhat a reiteration of what I said before, and that is the confecting of new legislation is a process. That process to this point has already involved 3 hearings before this body. At a minimum, there will be 3 hearings before the council as it relates to this matter. That is the council meeting where it's introduced, actually the agenda review committee before the council meeting where it's introduced, the council meeting where it's introduced, the agenda review committee meeting before it is considered for adoption, and the council may study it and do the very same things you're doing. My point is simply this: that does not pre-permit the council from having the opportunity to get with staff to see what they've done. And if they want to incorporate those changes, the council, if it is substantive, may have to re-advertise, or perhaps may have to refer it back to you. I recognize that all of those things are possibilities, but do not be confused. You do not have a proposed path, legislative path in front of you that has a barricade or roadblock that stops you from making the amendment that you contemplate this evening.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Lee Domingue, and I'm here to suggest to the commissioners that they indeed consider postponing this motion or this proposition, and for these reasons. It seems to me that we're talking about this idea coming before this commission multiple times, the first time of which was in January, By the way, at that time, Mr. Hernandez and I both spoke in opposition to it. And I recall that there was such confusion amongst everyone, not just about the wording, but about the purpose as to why the whole concept of increasing the venue event classification in unincorporated St. Tammany. And many members of the commission commented, why are we doing this? And rightfully so, because there was no explanation, and really there was no well thought out process in terms of the wording as to what was being done and why. I'm going to give you an example of that. It's pretty obvious that we're talking about a small venue, and now it's being recommended for NC5. Small venue is 150 or up to 150 guests. In all frankness, how is that going to be regulated? Who's going to control that? Are those 150 guests inside a building, or is it 150 inside a building with the fire marshals okay, and 200 people outside the building? Where's the regulation in that? And number two, why are we doing this? Because I have spoken with multiple businesses who are doing this legally now. They paid all the necessary fees, the permits, they paid for the commercial zoning, and they are now in the process of making money or barely making money across the parish, and there are multiple, many of these venues in both sides of the parish and in between. Now, if we increase the number of businesses or properties doing this, and even if it's only an additional 100, and each one of them do 5 events, that's 500 events that now are taken away from those businesses which are now operating. The point is this: I have talked to at least a half dozen of these businesses. None of them know anything about it. They have never heard of this. The whole proposition was absolutely foreign to them. Therefore, I respectfully suggest that the council, the commissioners, considering re-advertising this, letting the public know about it, and more importantly, letting the businesses who are now operating know about it and the possible adverse effects they may have on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public? Yes, sir.
I'm Tom Collins. One of the purposes of our zoning regulations is to protect residents from undue disturbances. The noise ordinance, for example, is one of those things that we depend on. I've found it to be totally unenforceable. The sheriff's office has informed me that they do not have a meter nor a person trained and certified on the meter with which to measure decibel levels. The code enforcement people also do not have such a person nor a machine. So that is no protection for residents from that undue disturbance. Another thing that could come about from this type of venue is light pollution. And I have personal experience with that. We live in an area full of wildlife. Some of the night wildlife has disappeared. We used to love to hear our owls at night and observe them. We have no owls for the last couple of years because of light pollution. The third item that is not going to be addressed by this type of zoning is traffic. I know parking is addressed, is suggested to be addressed in this ordinance, but not traffic itself. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Mr. Shane, did you any further comments? Yes, sir. Mr. Lagarde, any further comments? Yes, sir. This time I would close it to the public and bring it to the commission. Commissioner Drum.
Yes, sir. First thing, these last 2 gentlemen who came up just gave their name. They didn't say where they lived.
Okay, if you gentlemen would please fill out a speaker's card and give your address as well.
I have one other thing.
Yes, sir.
We're discussing light pollution. I can understand about the animals, and if your neighbor threw a party, it's a private residence, and yet they're not living under this right here. But if somebody has a business, you want to put restrictions on them. But if they have a party by a private individual every night, there are no restrictions. Just to open that discussion up.
Any further comments by the commission? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Davis to approve as amended with the NC5 and HC1 zoning changes, second by Commissioner Willie. Please vote.
Ms. Casabon and Mr. Randolph voted against the motion. All others voted in favor. Motion approved.
(2017-879-ZC) withdrawn. Existing zoning, A2 Suburban District, HC2 Highway Commercial District. Proposed zoning, NC6 Public Cultural and Recreational District. The parcel is located on the west side of Louisiana Highway 25, north of MP Planche Road, south of Lake Ramsey Road, Ward 3, District 3. The parcel, .51 acres. The petitioner, River Park Estates LLC, Corey Herberger. The owner, River Park Estates LLC, Corey Herberger. Council District 3, postponed from the February 6th, 2018 meeting. Staff, any further comment?
No, it was just requested to be withdrawn.
We do not have to vote on it, do we? No. No, we just read it into the record. 2017-895-ZC, existing zoning, A1 Suburban District. Proposed zoning, HC3 Highway Commercial District. The parcel is located on the south side of Louisiana Highway 40, west of Rainey Road, east of Albert Thompson Road, being 10580, Louisiana Highway 40, Folsom, Ward 2, District 3. The parcel, 4 acres. The petitioner, Shane Blue. The owner, Brandon and Myra Houston. Council District 3. Staff.
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the front portion of the site to be developed with industrial uses and the rear of the site with residential and agricultural uses. Although a portion of the site is developed with a large metal building, staff does not see any compelling reason to recommend approval, considering that the site is surrounded by undeveloped land and residential uses. Staff recommends that the request be denied.
Is the petitioner here? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
Yeah, we're going to move to deny.
Motion to deny by Commissioner Willie. Commissioner Casabon.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Casabon. Any further comments, questions of the commission? If not, we have a motion by Commissioner Willie to deny, second by Commissioner Casabon. Would remind the commission that an affirmative vote is a vote to deny. Please vote. Pardon? No. Commissioner Richard, it's the following. Thank you. Okay. Staff has recommended denying of this motion. Again, just to reiterate, we have a motion by Commissioner Willie to deny, second by Commissioner Casabon. An affirmative vote is a vote to deny. Please vote.
All voted in favor to deny. Motion approved.
2018-902-ZC, existing zoning, HC2 Highway Commercial District. Proposed zoning, HC3 Highway Commercial District. The parcel is located in the southeast corner of Indian Village Road and US Highway 190 East, being 467 Indian Village Road, Slidell, Ward 8, District 13. The parcel, 1.515 acres. The petitioner, Joe H. and Judy A. Malone. The owner, Joe H. and Judy A. Malone. Council District 13. Staff?
The future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses. There's an existing gas station and convenience store located on the site. Staff feels there is no compelling reason to recommend approval of the request. Considering that HC3 zoning allows for more of an intense uses than HC2, staff recommends the designation be denied.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? Mr. Shane.
Good evening. Jeff Shane, Jones Fussell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, and I represent the owner and petitioner, Mr. and Mrs. Joe Malone, who are here with me this evening. You may remember that we spent some time with you probably about 12 or so months ago. My client owns the Indian Village Trading Post business, and we came to you at that time seeking an upzone of a parcel that they own to HC2 in hopes of building a family-style restaurant that would also be available to host venue events. Somewhat interesting. That matter, of course, was recommended by the commission and went to the council, and for a variety of business reasons, my client elected not to go forward with that zoning and actually had Councilman Blanchard remove the ordinance because we didn't feel like it was appropriate to zone property if in fact we were not ready to go forward and utilize it. The representation had been that we were ready to do something. My clients have now decided on a different venture that is a part of their business. And in that regard, it's really fairly simple. They have had a good bit of demand through the years as they operate the business to expand it and provide some other opportunities. Currently, they have a gas or fuel station. They have a convenience store. They also prepare various hot foods, pizza, that type thing, if you will, sandwiches, etc. And there has been request made by a good many customers that they consider opening a daiquiri shop as a part of the operation. So this case comes to you on the same 1.5 acres where they conduct their business. It's not a new parcel. They anticipate building an addition to the existing building, a little less than 1,000 feet. Maximum occupancy would be 32 persons, and they will have daiquiri machines and would obviously sell daiquiris to those that want to come to their place of business. This is not being developed as a bar, as a lounge, as a nightclub. There would be no bands, no live music. My client has been in business at this location for 8 years. His closing hour is 10 o'clock, and he would continue to make that his closing hour. As you may remember, as we did in the prior HC2 case, likewise in this case, either for your comfort and benefit or for the comfort and benefit of the public, we would be happy to confect a deed restriction that would run in favor of the neighborhood homeowner associations that would specifically assure them of the following. Number one, the closing hour, 10 o'clock. Number two, that there would be no bands or live music, if you will, at any time. Number three, that although HC3, it would not be used for what we'll say functions, venues, receptions. That is not what they're trying to accomplish. This space may not be exactly this size, but remember that it's roughly about a 30-foot by 30-foot space. It would have a separate entrance into the space, although this addition is actually a part of the same building. So you can't go into the store and go into the daiquiri shop or go into the daiquiri shop and migrate into the store. It obviously would be for adults only. It would not be for children. My client, this is a fairly remote area. It doesn't mean there aren't some things in that area, but for the most part, we think that this would be a matter of convenience. And this idea to develop and extend the business of my client was really came from the request of many of the people who obviously do business with him. Now, as you might expect, but I think I should at least make you aware, his convenience store sells wine, beer, hard liquor. Granted, it's all packaged or closed label. I'm not suggesting that it's available for consumption, but I mean, the point is that some of the issues that we may hear about this evening, to some extent, are already at this location. And I make that point not only for the self-serving purpose, but also to tell you that he has been able to conduct his business with regard to sales without incident. It's not been a situation where people are buying spirits and consuming them on site, or where there have been problems with noise or altercations or fighting or drunkenness, things of that nature. Just to the contrary, we think he's been a model business. He appreciates the fact that the neighbors in the area have been greatly supportive of his business. They make his business every day. And this is something else that he and his wife would like to do to provide them for another opportunity. Now, with all that having been said, it may occur to you, you know, maybe a daiquiri shop isn't that terrible a thing under any circumstance. Why HC3? It's my appreciation that staff studied the request, and they believe that because this is a segregated 900 square feet, meaning it's not a part of a restaurant, it's not a part of a larger business. Again, it is a freestanding business. It more properly falls into the classification of HC3. It does not fit into the existing HC2. There is no opportunity to get a conditional use permit. There's no other zone that is available. So although I respect staff's comments that they don't feel that HC3 is appropriate at this location, I would agree if this were a large tract, or maybe a medium-sized tract, a lot of which was undeveloped. Because I think the obvious concern could be, well, look at all the things you can do in HC3. Well, I would suggest to you, look at all the things you can do in HC3 on an existing 1.5 acre parcel that is already, for the most part, fully developed with a convenience store and gas station. So I do not minimize the significance of the request, but I also tell you that I believe that there can be a place for a daiquiri store in this business that can be run successfully without interruption to the public, and quite frankly, hopefully something that would be well accepted and a convenience to the public. So for that reason, I ask that you consider recommending HC3 to the council for my client's property. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, sir.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to comment regarding case number 2018-902ZC, Indian Village Road. My name is Jerry Whitman, and I reside at 190 East Pearl Drive, Slidell, Louisiana, the old River Oaks subdivision, and currently serve as Vice President of the River Oaks Homeowners Association. A negotiated agreement in 2017 regarding a restaurant and bar constructed on the west side of Highway 190 across from the Chevron service station was agreed to with limitations, including no daiquiris. Application was withdrawn. Appears, based on current application, that the original intent was for a bar and a daiquiri shop. This facility would threaten the ambience and culture of some 160 plus an additional 90 homes in River Oaks of Holly Ridge, totaling 250. Residential upscale family homes served by the single access egress street, Indian Village Road, and will negatively impact property values. We understand that an additional structure possibly connected to the existing service station The first we've heard of this evening. A bar, a sit-down bar and daiquiri shop with takeout privileges. If approved, will, 1, erode the non-commercial status of Indian Village Road, 2, further expose its residents to risk and degradation to their quality of life, 3, negatively impact property values, a near certainty with a bar in any community. Ladies and gentlemen, we agree with the staff for their work and compliment them and recommend and respectfully request that the commission deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, Mr. Shane, 5 minutes of rebuttal.
Thank you. With regard to Mr. Whitman's comments, as it relates to the prior case, it did not preclude the sale of daiquiris. I have the deed restriction with me this evening that we executed. That case involved an HC2 and an entertainment overlay. And although there was a prohibition of what I will call a freestanding bar or lounge, it was always presented to you to be primarily a restaurant, but with, I guess we will say, a complementary or secondary bar. I'm not suggesting that it wasn't a component, but I guess my point is that I don't want the commission to believe that your approval in the past for the other zoning, nor the proposal that we bring to you this evening, I mean, there has never been a prohibition with regard to the sale of daiquiris. In fact, the primary purpose for this zoning request is so that my client can buy a couple of daiquiri machines and run a daiquiri shop. And I realize that there could be commentary about the value of having a daiquiri shop at that location. I did not mention in my previous comments, but please be advised that there is no drive-through window or pickup window, and that if any product leaves the premise, as per your law, it has to be closed container. So the idea that it's really not, at least the classic situation of a bar, lounge, etc., again, with the representations we made about no band, no live music, obviously not hosting special events, things of that nature. It is not going to be a reception venue. And all of these things we would confect into a deed restriction if you deemed it to be appropriate. So with all due respect, again, we believe that Mr. and Mrs. Malone's example, their experience in running the business at that location has been stellar. They have demonstrated that they deserve an opportunity to expand the business, provide these services, if you will, to their neighbors and friends, many of which, as I said, support this effort. It's the reason that they've taken it to this point. And again, we ask that you consider making that recommendation to the council. Thank you, Mr. Monroe.
Thank you. Mr. Whitman, any further comments?
There are other comments within the piece of notes that we provided you. This is aggravated by the size of the street known as Indian Village Road. It's really a small street. It's a small two-lane. It is bounded by no shoulders, basically. It's also has wide and deep ditches. So there is additional risk associated with additional activity, additional traffic. And for that reason, and the fact that even though it says that the daiquiris will be contained, it's widely known that they're also provided with a straw. And you walk out the door, they're available for use. So we again would ask you to deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Not at this time. I would close it to the public and bring it to the commission. Commissioner Willie.
A question of staff. HC3, is a bar outright permitted in HC3?
Yes.
Yes. And that HC3 can be transferable to new property owners or whatever?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Drum.
Mr. Shane, how many sit-down or chairs or whatever it was you mentioned would be inside the place?
Maximum of 32. And approximately 950 square feet.
Okay, I know this service station. I know Indian Village Road. Where will he park all those cars?
His site plan will include new parking to accommodate.
So he'd have to go behind his facility, right?
Behind and around. We understand that the inclusion of the square footage to get a building permit, we would have to demonstrate that we meet the parking requirements and provide code parking. And yes, sir, the site is big enough, and we intend to provide code parking.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Dougherty.
Based on the comments, Mr. Shane and Mr. Whitman, and knowing that the previous case that we heard was going to have a bar in it and also some daiquiri, or a daiquiri machine maybe in it. At this point in time, I'm going to make a motion to approve this case 2018-902ZC with the deed restrictions mentioned by Mr. Shane included.
Motion by Commissioner Dougherty to approve with the recommendation by Mr. Shane in favor of the Homeowners Association and adjoining neighbors on a deed restriction. Commissioner Davis.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Davis. Any further comments, questions of the commission? Please vote.
Mr. Willie and Mr. Manella voted against the motion. All others voted in favor. Motion approved.
2018-915-ZC, existing zoning, A4 single-family residential district. Proposed zoning, A4 single-family residential district and manufactured housing overlay. A parcel located on the southeast corner of Oak Drive and Ash Drive, being Lot 1, Square 16, River Garden subdivision, Ward 8, District 9. Parcel 7,500 square feet. The petitioner, Melvin Alonzo. The owner, Melvin Alonzo. Council District 9. Staff?
The future land use plans calls for the area to be developed with residential uses, including manufactured homes. Staff does not have any objection to the request. Staff recommends the request for manufactured housing overlay be approved.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? If you please come to the podium, sir, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Melvin Alonso. I'm really don't know what I'm doing. I would love to, if you let my wife to speak for me, because she know more about.
Certainly, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Ma'am, if you'd give your address for the record.
My name is Mickey Alonso, 59275 Shady Lane in Slidell.
And the reason for the request, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I'm new to this.
Take your time.
My kid's here with me too. We just want to have a place for our kids for when my husband and I are gone, and I want them to have the land as they need it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in front of the commission? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Dougherty.
Yes, Ms. Alonso, you plan on putting a mobile home on this property? You mentioned just the children having a place to play.
Yes, sir, for the moment we would, because the money issues of building a house and things of that nature, so it's a little cheaper for us at the moment.
Okay, what we're looking at is just simply allowing a mobile home to be placed on the property. It doesn't have anything to do with your children. And I realize that, you know, once you have a residence there, then they're gonna have a place to play.
Yes, sir, I'd like them to get from where we are now to having an area to play, because where we live now, we don't have that.
Okay. I'll put a motion on the floor to approve 2018-915ZC as described by staff.
Motion by Commissioner Dougherty to approve. Commissioner Randolph. Second by Commissioner Randolph. Any further comments? Motion by Commissioner Dougherty to approve, second by Commissioner Randolph. Please vote.
All voted in favor, motion approved.
Twenty 2018-916-ZC. Existing zoning, A4, single-family residential district. Proposed zoning, A4A, single-family residential district. The parcel is located on the southeast corner of Coffee Street and Henry Clay Street, being Lot 2A, Town of Mandeville subdivision, and 1541 Coffee Street, Mandeville, Ward 4, District 10. The parcel, 14,940 square feet. The petitioner, Robert DeRoche. The owner, Robert DeRoche. Council District 10. Staff.
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses. Staff is not in favor of the request, considering the site is surrounded by A4 single-family residential zoning. The objective of the request is to allow for a lot to be subdivided into 2 parcels. Staff recommends the request be denied.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I'll make a motion to deny.
Motion by Commissioner Fitzmaurice to deny. Commissioner Drum. Second by Commissioner Drum. Any further comments? We have a motion by Commissioner Fitzmaurice to deny. Second by Commissioner Drum. Remind the commission that an affirmative vote is 1 to deny. Please vote. So they would be absent. Right. Call the vote.
Mr. Randolph and Mr. Dougherty did not vote, so they abstain. All others voted in favor to deny, motion approved.
Thank you. (2018-920-ZC), existing zoning, A1A Suburban District and Rural Overlay. Proposed zoning, A1A Suburban District, Rural Overlay and Manufactured Housing Overlay. The parcel is located on the south side of Tinney Road, west of Louisiana Highway 40, being 19244 Tinney Road, Folsom, Ward 2, District 6. The parcel, .067 acres. The petitioner, William H. and Gladys Darlene C. Marklary. The owner, William H. and Gladys Darlene C. Marklary. Council District 6. Staff.
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential and agricultural uses. Staff has no objection to the request and would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here? Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, ma'am.
I am Gladys Darlene McClary. I reside at 19248 Tenney Road, Covington, Louisiana.
The reason for the request, ma'am?
We're requesting that we be able to put a mobile home on that property. We had one on there until Katrina, actually after Katrina, but Katrina put trees through it, so it destroyed it. And we've continued keeping our utilities up all these years. But we have a daughter who has a 3.5-year-old son, and they need a place to live. And the property joins ours, where we live, but we would appreciate your consideration for this approval so that we could provide them housing.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve. Commissioner Randolph? Second by Commissioner Randolph. Any further comments? We have a motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve, second by Commissioner Randolph. Please vote.
All voted in favor, motion approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, for convenience, we have a laptop presentation in case after he's just going to set it up.
Certainly.
You-
Certainly.
Trying to be efficient. The other thing is that if the chair is so inclined, we're case 13. If you would like to take case 14 for Mr. Marone, that certainly is fine with us. And
Ms.
we'll-
Moreau, would you like that?
That was mentioned to me somewhere along the way this evening.
Would you like to get home before breakfast, Mr. Malone? Great. That would be wonderful. With that, then, we will amend the agenda to hear the following case first. 2017-648-ZC, major amendment to the Plan Unit Development Overlay. Location, parcels located on the north side of Dove Park Road, west of Louisiana Highway 59, Ward 4, District 5. The parcel, 58.45 acres. The petitioner, Dove Park Estates LLC, Corey Herberger. The owner, Dove Park Estates LLC, Corey Herberger. Staff.
The petitioner is requesting a major amendment to the PUD. The amendment consists of a reconfiguration of the proposed subdivision, allowing for the 84 lots to be located outside of the wetlands and south of the existing FECO servitude. And I'd like to invite you to look at the maps. I'm sure that you've reviewed the plans of what was originally approved and what is currently proposed. It is definitely an improvement, and staff would like to recommend approval of the request for major amendment to the PUD.
Thank you. Mr. Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Having come behind this other case several times at the Planning Commission, I appreciate very much the opportunity to jump in front tonight. The plan before you this evening, or the request, is for the piece of property which came before you once before and is located just over on Dove Park Road. It's on the north side of Dove Park, near its intersection with Highway 59. And if you will recall, I appeared before you, I believe it was in about June of last year, where we requested the A3 underlying zoning and the PUD overlay for this project. That request was approved, and the plan consisted primarily of 84 residential lots, a 1.43 acre industrial parcel, and retaining about 51% of the site in green space. And if you will recall, the site was a little bit unique in that we had a large CLECO right-of-way that traversed diagonally across the site. We had the Little Creek tributaries that ran through the site, and so there were some challenges in the design. And since that approval, our engineers, the developer, and the staff have continued to kind of work on that design, and we felt that we have a better proposal for you tonight, and we ask for your consideration of that plan. Now, the plan as revised is similar to the plan that you saw back in June of last year, but it's reconfigured to accomplish a couple of things. One, to avoid some significant wetlands on what I'll call the north side of the CLECO right-of-way. Also, to preserve almost the entire north side of the CLECO right-of-way as green space, other than one large estate parcel. Other than that, that entire swath of ground, which we believe is sensitive, will continue to be maintained as green space in perpetuity. So if you'll review the plan with me, as I said, the prior plan had 84 residential lots. This plan has 84 residential lots. We had the industrial parcel. We have the industrial parcel on this plan, the exact same size and acreage. The green space was at 51%. That is now up to 55%. So there's about almost 33 acres of the site is preserved in green space. In addition, we are continuing to maintain buffers along the Little Creek area on the south side of the CLECO right-of-way, with the entire Little Creek on the north side held in perpetuity as green space. In addition, I would point out to you that we've added an amenity to the plan, which you may not be able to see because it's somewhat small, but if you will think about the location of this property, it is adjacent to the Tammany Trace. So working with staff and one of their suggestions, we have added a sidewalk that will go from our eastern entrance down Dove Park to tie in to the trace. We recognize that we'll need permission to make that connection and to enter the trace, but we're showing it now, and we will be back before you at the appropriate time to receive, hopefully receive that approval to make that connection, which we think will be a boon to the neighborhood. I would also point out to you that after you approved this plan in June of last year, at the point that the matter was before the council for adoption of the ordinance, we had a few residents along our western boundary come out who had some concerns. We were able to table the case a few times at the council level and meet with them, and we were able to work out with Councilman Toledano's help a resolution to their concerns. Those concerns and our commitments at that time are reflected on this plan, and I'd like to point those out to you. We've also increased one of the buffer areas with regards to that problem that we had on the western boundary. One, we agreed to construct a 6-foot opaque fence along a portion of that common boundary where it was sensitive with our neighbor. We agreed to create a 10-foot buffer, and we agreed to plantings in that area. All of those items are still in place and are going to be maintained and are not modified by this plan. But we have also been able to, through this reconfiguration, create an additional 10 feet. So we went from a 10-foot buffer to a 20-foot area back there where there will be no houses and no structures. So we've increased that buffer by that additional 10 feet. But I wanted to point those items out to you because they were not brought to your attention at the meeting in June, and they are on this plan, and we intend to follow through with those commitments. So with that said, we would respectfully request your approval of the amendment to the PUD. As I said, the density stays the same, the land use stays the same, the green space and buffers are increased, and we would ask that you concur with the staff's recommendation and grant approval of the amendment before you this evening. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of the commissioners may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marone. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Randolph.
Thank you. Paul? Just for me to be clear, you said there were some additional amenities that have not been updated in what we have in front of us, and one of those was a 6-foot fence?
Yes, there is. We agreed along our western boundary where we adjoin, I think there are 3 residents over there, to construct a 6-foot wooden opaque fence. And so that will be along that western boundary. The 10-foot buffer that we agreed to is shown, and the additional 10 feet area is shown as well along that eastern boundary.
Okay.
Commission. Motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve. Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Commissioner Drum.
Paul?
Yes,
I find nothing wrong with the plan. In fact, I like it. It's a lot better in my opinion, than the one that you presented the first time. And I just wanted to pass that on to you and tell your engineers and everybody they did a good job.
we appreciate that, and we believe it's a better plan as well.
Any further comments? Not, we have a motion by Commissioner Randolph to approve, second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Please vote.
All voted in favor, motion approved.
Thank you. You're welcome, Mr. Moran.
Good luck.
That's right, exactly. All right. You leave your partner, Mr. Shane, sure. ZC 01-11-072, major amendment to the plan unit development overlay. Location, the parcel is located on the east side of I-10 East Service Road, west of Louisiana Highway 433, north of Lakeshore Boulevard East, south of Schneider Canal, Ward 9, District 13. The parcel, 1,083.6 acres. The petitioner, Jeffrey D. Shane. The owner, D.R. Horton, Inc., Gulf Coast. Mr. Shane, staff.
The petitioner is requesting a major amendment to the plan unit development overlay to allow for a subdivision sign exceeding the maximum allowable subdivision signage under the Unified Development Code. The signs, to be located on each side of the entrance from Lakeshore Village Boulevard, are proposed to be more than 930 square feet, with additional square footage of decorative elements and a 48-foot tall towers. Staff feels that there is no compelling reason to recommend approval, considering that the sign not only exceed the maximum allowable square footage for residential subdivision signs of 48 square feet and commercial subdivision signs of 140 square feet, but also exceeds the permitted signs along I-10, which shall not exceed 250 square feet. And at this time, staff would like to recommend denial of the request for a major amendment to the PUD.
Thank you. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. And I have the pleasure of representing both the owner and petitioner, D.R. Horton, this evening with regard to their development in Lakeshore Villages. I know that all of you remember my trips before you as a planning commission as it relates to tentative subdivision review for Phase 3. And by the way, we will be back with you next Tuesday in that regard. But I say that because at the outset of our introduction of our development to you as a planning commission, we provided you an overview and a presentation. So one of the things I would like to do this evening, we recognize that the request we make of you this evening is extraordinary. It literally exceeds code. We understand that. But I think you should understand that initially we believed that this matter probably should have gone to the Board of Adjustments to the extent that we were seeking features that exceeded code. We met with staff, in particular Ms. Lambert, Mr. Fontenot, and they encouraged us that they thought it would be more appropriate for us to come to you as a zoning commission and ask you to consider amending the PUD in order to accommodate our request. What I would like to establish this evening is hopefully a vision that you can understand, see, and respect, that Horton is trying to create a gateway at this particular location to the development of nearly 1,100 acres, which is going to support nearly 3,000 single-family residential sites. The site is a mixed PUD. It will also have institutional uses in it as well, such as property for a school development in the future, park, recreation, all of the things that you see in an active development. So I say those things because I would like you to hopefully understand and envision that in order to introduce this 1,100-acre development, we're talking about a community. And it's a community that is flanked by Interstate 10, that the Oak Boulevard exit will be the primary workhorse as it relates to how people will access this area. And because most of the motoring public on I-10 will be traveling at speeds between 55 and 75, one would guess, as they go through this location, we want to make sure that we have prominent identification that is done in a very aesthetic and professional and upscale manner to identify the development, identify the community, and quite frankly, make a mark on this portion of St. Tammany Parish. In that regard, my Horton team is with me this evening, and I think you would be interested to know that Mr. Horton himself is with us in the audience, the gentleman sitting on the second row, because this is a major commitment that his company has made in Louisiana, in the Gulf South, certainly in St. Tammany Parish. But we also have with us various members of the Horton organization, but also including our consultants, DDG, and also the first gentleman that I'm going to introduce that will take you through a brief PowerPoint that has been previewed by staff and approved by them, believing it to be pertinent. So at this time, I would like to ask Mr. Corey Loeffner to come up. Corey is with KGA DeForest Design, a landscape architect group out of Katy, Texas, that does developments all over the country. He is the creator of the gateway vision that I have referred to, and I'd like to let him take you through some of the specifics of the request and show you why we think this shoe fits at this location.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Just real briefly, Mr. Shane touched on it, and I apologize if some of the things I get to are a little bit redundant. Just want to tell you real briefly about our company. We're a landscape architecture, design, and consultation company, as Mr. Shane indicated. We're out of Katy, Texas, which is on the west side of Houston. And we really specialize in community and neighborhood development. This is what we do. We work for some names that you would know. Obviously, D.R. Horton is one. We've had an established relationship with those guys for going back to 2010. We do work for some of his competitors as well. But this is our specialization. This is what we do. We try to help establish not just lots, but a sense of community in these places. Real briefly, Mr. Shane touched on this. This location has some particularly some constraints that are probably unique. We're on I-10 on the frontage road, and we tried to be cognizant of that fact during the design phase, that we've got to give D.R. Horton the visibility they need to be marketable on the I-10 corridor, which is a challenge. So a lot of times we find ourselves establishing how big do we need to be and kind of working backwards. They're going to be competing with car dealerships, other commercial interests that have pylon signs out there along the feeder road, and so they need to have a prominent presence. And Mr. Shane also already touched on the fact that this is a substantial development, over 1,000 acres. We don't know what the final lot count will be, but it's pretty high, 2,500 plus maybe. And so it needs an appropriately scaled entry experience. Real quick, wanted to show you, this is a video that we put together because a picture is worth 1,000 words, and this kind of gives you a sense of the scale coming in off the I-10 feeder road. And just pointing out that we want this to be something that is a special, we want this to be done right. D.R. Horton's putting their name on it. Our name is on it. We take pride in it. We want good materials. We want good methods. We've sunk a lot of money into geotechnical research and structural engineering, at least in the preliminary phase on this, to make sure everything is done right. We're not going to use cheap materials. This thing will be primarily masonry construction with a lot of steel bracing. This is not a plywood structure that's going to fall apart in 2 years. We're doing everything that we can to make sure that it's done properly. So we alluded to the heights briefly, the size of this thing. This slide here gives you a good idea of what sort of the size we're talking about. But again, we don't feel that it's an inappropriate size given the relationship to the feeder road, to the frontage road, the proximity, and just to giving them that visibility and the marketability that they're going to need. I didn't want to bog you guys down with construction details, but again, just wanted you to be aware that we're already investing significant time into figuring out the engineering aspect, the geotechnical aspect of this. How is this going to work? How do we make it as hurricane-proof as we possibly can? Just to know that we are interested in making this thing permanent. Wanted to just give you a couple of brief comparisons. This is a D.R. Horton project in Katy. This is a large development. It's fairly comparable in size. But just to give you an idea of what sort of scale is necessary when you're talking about a community this size. This project, monuments are not as tall, but this is a very, very wide entry footprint. And they sunk a significant amount of capital into this thing. This is a project in Katy that's probably about a 35-foot tall tower. Again, this is a D.R. Horton project. Just wanted to give you a couple of examples that show that this size it's large, but it's not necessarily without precedent. And that's all I've got. Mr. Shane, do you have any further comments?
Thank you, Corey. The parcel on which the gateway or signage would be developed is around 30 acres of commercial. That is a part of the 1,100 acres that we referred to. The relevance of the 30 acres of commercial is that for those of you that are familiar with Housey Beach and the service road in that area, there are obviously a lot of commercial developments, many of which are car dealerships, but many of which have I-10 signs, which are certainly larger than what one would typically see. And so the package that we're looking at here, and we didn't emphasize it, but you might notice at the end of the first block, there is a water feature section as well. The build-out of these facilities approach 7 figures as it relates to the gateway that we're going to develop for this particular subdivision. I think pragmatically, what I would ask you to focus on is these are not your typical subdivision monument signs. I mean, duh. but we're not suggesting that they really can be compared with traditional subdivision monument signs. That is not to take a slap at subdivision signs or the regulations that govern those. I understand and respect those and understand why we want governance and why we want uniformity and why we want scale. I would suggest to you, though, that when you have a tract of this magnitude, not just in acreage, but in terms of diversity of use, when you look at the environment that it's in with the other commercial businesses, when you look at the interstate being really the only access point to these properties, you can understand for a variety of reasons why someone that is going to make an investment and build a community wants to start off by having the front door be the most handsome front door that anyone can imagine. So I believe that the staff comments that refer you to think perhaps about this project more so as if it were permitted signs on I-10 in the commercial corridor that would allow 250 square feet per face. I realize that we exceed that, but I believe that that is a more appropriate point of reference when you're looking at the package. I realize that pretty pictures tell a story, that the reality of this presentation is, of course, what will ultimately be built on the ground. But I think that similar to the discussions we had when I came before you as a planning commission with regard to phase 3, this development is like something that we've never had in St. Tammany Parish. We can all scratch our head a little bit and try to think of anything that even comes remotely close to a development that has the different parameters and facets. So I believe that it is appropriate for you to use your discretion and to think about ways that we might accommodate a development such as this as it relates to, as I refer to it, the Horton Gateway to its development. I realize that this major amendment of the PUD would be something that would be historical, but it's a positive historical. I would tell you, to the extent that it may become precedential, to the extent that you have other developments that are similar to this in the various aspects that I've discussed, that's a good thing. Because I think having first-class developers do first-class development in our first-class parish is really what this is all about. So I hope that through our discussion this evening, because I'm sure that some, if not many of you, will have comments and questions, we can try to reach a common ground, because Horton is excited to get started, and this is where their story begins. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Is there anyone else in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Commissioner Casabon.
Yes, in my 20-something years on this commission, I have been bombarded by people in the community that have asked us to do this or do that, and the infrastructure was there, and we did what we could do with that infrastructure. This is a blank slate. This is what I've always said, that if we had a blank slate, what would we do with it? This is a first-class development. I think the structure fits the particular area because of the distance from the interstate. I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve. Commissioner Lauren.
Question for Helen. Helen, I noticed the signage is 48 feet tall. What does the parish normally have as the height restriction on signage?
9.
Pardon?
9 foot tall.
Nope, no height restriction?
9.
9. After 8, before 10?
9 feet?
Yes.
So we're going from 9 to 48. Okay. And 368 feet.
Your mic, the mic.
It's on.
Is it? Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. No, it's not, I don't think.
No,
Is it?
it's
Okay.
on.
We're going from
Maybe
250 feet
maybe I can clarify your question.
to 368 feet requested for the square footage of the signage.
Square footage wise, yes. Height wise, if it's just a regular subdivision sign, it's a maximum of 9 foot tall. However, along I-10, the commercial businesses are allowed to have a 35 foot tall sign.
Okay.
Commissioner Fitzmaurice.
I'm going to second the motion, and I agree. I think it is time, and given the area, it fits. You know, this Folsom and those type of places, we wouldn't have this, but where this is, I agree, and I think it fits, and I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Commissioner Richard.
Thank you. I was going to second the motion, but what's most important is we were talking about our regulations, and our regulations are there for a solid reason. But this doesn't fit our regulations, and we need to be clear about that. This is, you know, what's written on a piece of paper and what we have in ideas is based on the law of large numbers and the norm. This is an extraordinary opportunity, and I support it as well.
Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I support this as well. I think it's going to be a wonderful entrance from, into St. Tammany coming from across the Lake Pontchartrain. So I think this is the way we have to kind of be all, you know, advanced and start going with these larger subdivisions. And I think it'd be a very, very good benefit for the parish.
Commissioner Drum.
Which one is Dr. Horton? No, I've seen a number of your building sites, especially over in the Pensacola area, things like that, and I really enjoyed them. I think it was well done, well planned.
Thank you.
And I think this is definitely something that this parish has been missing for a long time to help it bring in more money and to bring in more people. And I totally agree. I think this is going to work out fine.
Thank you. The entry will serve also as entry to the school that will be built. I believe it's an elementary school. We're working with school districts, so, and a lot of them don't have a lot of money, so we're trying to work with them to go back as far in the subdivision where the kids can walk to school. We should be able, in this subdivision, to fill up the school. Also in this subdivision, there'll be some multi-generational housing that'll be built. We're looking at bringing in a Freedom Line product, which is age-targeted or age-restricted in this area as well. There seems to be a lot of people there that are empty nesters that want to move into a neighborhood that maybe has a gate, but is full-service neighborhood. In other words, they lock and leave. So the yards maintained, the water sprinkling systems maintained, but it's going to be a multi-use project. And what we're trying to develop is a destination point for people to say, wow, we're home. And I haven't seen a lot of those in Louisiana. We've built, you know, I don't know, today we own 400,000 lots across the United States, but we find that people are looking for more of a wow feature.
Yeah.
And there'll be, and I don't know whether we've shown it, but there'll be a amenity center in here that has swimming pools and slides, and he said we're approaching 7 digits. We're way the hell over 7 digits.
Staying corrected.
Okay. But that's what we're trying to create, a destination standpoint. There's not been a lot done in Louisiana. I think this will be an earmark for people, and you'll start to see a lot of neighborhoods that are conclusive to all kinds of different types of living. But that's and we're going to make it work.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. Our first deal we did 40 years ago didn't work, but we'll make this one work. We've learned a little since then, so.
And I also like the idea of the hardy board, the hardy plank, whatever you call it. That saved my house just prior to Katrina. Everybody else had vinyl. I came back, I still had a house. Everybody else had boards standing up.
Well, now, you know Hardy's a name brand. We use
All right.
Cementous fiberboard.
Oh, okay.
We actually do use Hardy, but
Yeah, so I like that feature as well. So I hope this goes well for you.
it will. It already is. We're there building now. We're selling about 200, 250 homes a year there, and we believe that we can increase that to about 500 homes a year. So,
Well, welcome to the neighborhood.
thank you.
Commissioner Randolph.
Yeah, while this does, Mr. Shane, while this does exceed, the signs actually do exceed parish code, I really applaud the vision. This is awesome. It's really, really nice. Something that large, but we anticipate at any time this might become an eyesore?
Well, I think it would be naive to say that if something were not maintained, that it certainly could be. But I would say, I guess, to the positive side, I guess that's the risk with any new development, no matter what the scale, no matter what the zoning classification. You know, the parcels on each side of the road actually could have been owned by different entities, and each would be entitled to separate sign rights. And, I mean, there were a variety of factors that maybe we could have thought about to try to make this thing not quite so extreme. But I think at the end of the day, I know that you have been to the Planning Commission meetings where we've shown you our vision for the development of this area. I don't think it's going to be an eyesore. I think it's going to end up being an icon. And I think we're going to have people telling us, have you seen what Horton has done at this exit on I-10? I think all of us in St. Tammany Parish. And I think it's something, as all of you have said, that we'll be proud of. So, yes, I think good to be guarded, but I don't think there's any real risk of that based on the company's performance across the country. This group has a track record. It's not their first rodeo, and we hope you give them an opportunity to build these features.
I like his vernacular of words instead of an eyesore, an icon. I like that, Jeff. Who will maintain that? Who will maintain
The
those?
developer.
Okay.
I assume it's not inconceivable that at some point way down the line, it could become part of an HOA situation, but that would have to be way down the line. The importance of this gateway for this development is so critical. It's probably going to be the crown jewel in the sense that and the amenities are what is going to make this development and community different. So you can bet that Mr. Horton is going to spend plenty of time in Louisiana to make sure that it is iconic and not an eyesore.
I like the idea of the lifestyle in the community and dressing it up to enhance and to beautify not just the area, but also have economic impact, educational impact. Has this been put forth a motion yet?
Yes, yes.
We're ready to vote.
Just commenting. Mr. Shane, to you or to whomever in your D.R. Horton team, Mr. Horton had made a comment that current sales are about 250 homes a year. He would expect, and I would expect his sales and marketing staff to fulfill his objective of 500. It's always good to take care of the head of the company. At that, I believe it's 3,500 homes that's estimated to be in here.
I think it's actually more in the 2,800 range.
Okay,
It's a little shy of 3,000.
My question gets to how long estimate before you see this development built out?
Well, built out, Mr. Horton will kick me if I say too long, but we've had this discussion before, and I think you have to assume that this is going to be an 8 to 10, 12-year build-out. He also told me he was way past 7 figures a little while ago.
Yeah.
Of course, it could, but I mean, I think to suggest something more rapid than that, if it is, it'll be because the product's good and our market continues to be great.
The reason I normally don't comment too often on cases, my role is primarily to facilitate them. This particular project and this particular property, though, I'm exceedingly familiar with. From when Mr. Torres had it all, when it was prior to its development. So some 30 years. And it's interesting because when I first saw this, I was a little taken aback by two four-story iconic monuments being placed on this property. To my knowledge, there aren't any four-story buildings in the area, even across at Oak Harbor. I think they max out at 3 stories. However, you come across the Twin Span Bridge, and this area you first see. Currently, when you come across the bridge from the South Shore, you see some commercial buildings on the right, which I don't think that was the vision. Some of them are actually metal buildings. And so I believe that this further enhances, as the other commissioner said, really what the vision can be. D.R. Horton has an excellent business name. I've spent more time probably in that subdivision relative to our cases than any other. I've spoken to many of your people, and I identified myself so that I could just ask a few questions. The construction, I commend the cleanliness, because this will have a traumatic impact on the entranceway to St. Tammany Parish, as well as the neighboring areas, given this tract of land. I think the only other one that's currently being built in St. Tammany of any comparable aspect might be Tammany on 434, but that's several miles off the interstate. They built substantial entrance signs as well, masonry construction, some similarities, but again, not the entranceway to St. Tammany Parish. So I too support this. Again, with the investment that you've made and the commitment that it truly be first class, and as Mr. Shane said, to be iconic coming in. It affords a great opportunity.
I appreciate your comments.
So with that, again, if any other commissioners have any further comments, I'd be more than happy to address those. If not, this time we have a motion by Commissioner Casabon to approve, second by Commissioner Fitzmaurice. Please vote.
All voted in favor, motion approved.
Is there any old business to come before the commission? Any new business before the commission? Not entertain a motion to adjourn.